Saludos amigos, los invitamos a escuchar La Mesa Redonda, The Round Table, donde discutimos los temas del día, hablando de política, educación y otros temas, locales, regionales y mundiales, por USA la Radio. Señores oyentes de USA la Media, estamos aquí de nuevo con su programa La Mesa Redonda de Round Table. Desde el corazón del barrio hispano, en la ciudad del amor fraternal, les habla Fernando Mendez, Dylan de Rosato al tablero, Andre del Valle is our special guest today.
Thank you.
So, Andre, we were talking about which language to use. We'll go back and forth. We'll see. Sometimes for political discussions,
Right.
because of the language you must use, you know.
The technicalities, I get it. Yep.
Yeah, people get confused with policy and politics, with all kinds of vocabulary that is better understood in English.
Right.
So,
Right.
But estamos listos a hablar español o inglés, ¿no?
Cualquiera de los dos.
Cualquiera de los dos.
Cualquiera.
Ok, André, ¿por qué estás aquí hoy?
So, la razón por qué estoy aquí hoy, obviamente gracias por tenerme aquí. Yo estoy corriendo para ser representante estatal en el distrito 175, que es desde Kensington, Fishtown, Northern Liberties, hasta Queen Village y Society Hill, aquí en Filadelfia. Y la razón por qué estoy aquí es porque quiero hablar de mi visión para el distrito. Quiero hablar por qué necesitamos más representación latina y latino en Harrisburg.
Are there a lot of Latinos in this district?
Sí. Como nosotros tenemos Kensington, hay una población allí boricua, dominicano, hay colombianos también en la área. Tenemos casi como cerca de 3,000 latinos en el distrito.
Okay. ¿Y cuántos de los 3,000, cuántos van a votar?
Espero que todos 3,000 y más.
Porque ese es el problema. Cuando hablan del voto latino,
sí.
¿no? It's sort of a myth that there is no block of Latino vote.
Right.
I just am convinced that there's no, because the Mexicans have some issues that we don't all share regarding immigration and the border and other issues. The Puerto Ricans don't have the same issues. They don't care about immigration as much. We should all care about it, but I mean the reality is that for Puerto Ricans, immigration and citizenship and being in this country is not a problem.
Right. Well, what I would say is that every voter has their own specific issues, right? Your issues are very different from my issues. I talk a lot about student loans, the opioid epidemic. I talk to my father, who's 78. His issues are Social Security, Medicare. Totally different issues, right? So I think we see that in the Latino community as well. But one of the things that I always say is we have, as a Latino population in a community, we need someone that inspires us in order to go out and vote. Someone that, will come to our door and understands the issues of the community. And I do believe I'm that candidate. I've worked in North Philadelphia under Councilwoman Sanchez. I know a lot of the issues in the area.
Right.
So from generational poverty to the crime rate to the opioid epidemic, I've dealt with that. So
Okay. Do you know who Roger Mudd was? A newsman?
No,
Long time
I don't
ago.
think so.
Long
Yeah.
before you were born, probably. Anyway, one of his classic question of Ted Kennedy, who was sort of the heir of the Kennedy name in politics, and so Roger asked him, why do you want to be president? And he stumbled, and that was the end of his career as president.
One question.
And then, that killed his prospects.
Right.
He was an able, capable, and historic senator. I mean, he was an amazing legislator, but he fumbled that question. Why do you want to be the representative for the 175th district?
Well, I'm not going to stumble on that question. I have a full career ahead of me. I know that. But the reason is, in 2018, this district is very unique because in 2018, what ended up happening was we had a representative who was there for about a decade. He was sick, ended up resigning, and a few weeks later ended up passing away. But before that happened, he resigned. The Democratic Party actually appointed the current representative into the seat. So the voice of 30,000 Democrats was never heard because the Democratic Party actually appointed this individual into office, taking away the 30,000 Democrats who were eligible to vote in that race. The reason why I'm running and the reason why I think I'm the best candidate in this race is, one, I believe that our community is going to, at this time, actually voice their opinion. There's a lot of frustration in the district. There's frustration with the status quo that we have. And a lot of the residents are tired of this opioid epidemic that's going on. It's not only impacting those battling addiction, but it's impacting long-term residents. We have a high influx of millennials in the area who are being, drowned by student loan debt. And at the end of the day, when we have a representative who has ignored an opioid epidemic, a student loan crisis, gun violence in the district, just quality of life issues, the voice of the people are fed up with it, and they're going to come out and vote. And my whole campaign's theme is a better vision for the district. And I'm gonna talk about it later on in the show, but I do have a better vision for this district and what I want to accomplish in that time.
Great. Now, you mentioned Maria Quiñones,
Yes.
and I assume you're from the same, you're her protege in a way.
Mm-hmm.
She did not receive the endorsement of the Democratic Party.
Right.
Are you going that way also?
I am right now. I'm running as a candidate who is running to win. I was just endorsed by the Working Families Party. I'm happy to meet with the Democratic Party. However, I'm not going to. I know where I stand on a lot of issues, and I think that unfortunately sometimes we've ignored the Latino communities as a Democratic Party, and I'm gonna stick to what my values are, and if the Democratic Party wants to meet with me, they know how to get in contact with me.
Okay, well, let's hope somebody's listening.
Yep.
And they pick up the phone. Anyway, well, that's part of a problem and also probably a plus for your campaign.
Mm-hmm.
As we know, and I have mentioned this even as early as yesterday, the Democratic Party has been in charge of this city for more than 6 decades,
Mm-hmm.
not solving any of the problems of poverty, wealth creation. In one of the poorest urbs in the country, we are in the poorest neighborhood in the country. Mm-hmm. And what have they done since they took power in 1953? Mm-hmm. What have they done for the city of Philadelphia? That's,
I am running as a Democrat. I do believe that right now we do have the two-party system, right? I think there's a lot of good Democrats out there that have fought the fight. You mentioned Maria Quiñones Sanchez. That's someone who I had the pleasure of not only beginning my career with as an intern, but flourishing in as a legislative aide for her. And, her fights and her battles that she's taken on, one, ensuring affordable housing for residents, $100 million worth of affordable housing, to fighting this opioid epidemic, to creation of the TAP program, which made sure that residents had a basic right, which was access to water. Those are fights that...
What is the TAP program?
TAP is pretty much... if you have an income bill or a water bill that comes in, it's based on your income, so not based on the actual bill. So let's say your income only allows you to pay $60 worth of a water bill. You're not getting a $200 water bill that's going to continue putting you into debt, later on leading to a lien on your house, leading to homelessness potentially. But it was a basic human right. I mean, the fact that folks were having their water shut off because they couldn't afford it is just a policy that I think is very outdated, and I'm glad that she took the lead on that in drafting it, and we worked on that for months to make sure it got implemented. But that's helped hundreds of thousands of residents all over the city, not only in North Philadelphia. This is something that has impacted the whole city and is now being replicated in other cities right now.
Okay, well, that's Well, that's a good sign
Yes.
that the program was successful enough to be replicated
Hmm.
elsewhere. I like to hear that because one program like that is like reminds me of the another successful program that has been replicated is the Unity Cup, where the soccer teams
Hmm. Yep.
in the city represented in all the
Right. Right.
different
Right.
countries has grown from 16 to 24 to I don't know. I had Bill Salvatore here, who was the director of that, and he said that it's grown up to like 52 countries. I
Right.
mean, they could have as many as possible, but
Hmm.
obviously they are limited in terms of stadiums and
Right.
whatnot.
Right.
But this is good. So, any other programs that you were involved in that have been
Yes.
successful?
Yes, absolutely. So prior to me leaving city council in January, one of the things and one of the biggest accomplishments that I'm very proud of was the Domestic Workers Bill of Rights. So
Mm-hmm.
not only did that protect house cleaners, nannies, but it was a program that it's a sector that was unregulated. At the federal level, they were actually exempt out of a lot of protections, basic protections. So from having a contract to knowing what their schedule was, what their pay was,
Right.
what exactly their job description was, that was all exempt. So one of the things we did was we created the Domestic Workers Bill of Rights, which was the most progressive and comprehensive Bill of Rights in the nation. So what we did here in Philadelphia is now being replicated as the standard model for all other cities because it got so much done from having a contract not only having a contract but having it in your native language. So if I'm Colombian, right, which I am, but and I'm trying to read a contract, I can't be in English because I don't understand what I'm signing. So we made sure that one piece of that is that we have the contract translated. We make sure that we have the job descriptions, their pay, and everything written in there. So it protected one of our most unregulated and unappreciated sectors across the city.
Is it available in other languages?
It is, and that's something that the Mayor's Office of Labor is currently working on, is translating it into I believe it's the top 5 languages, and then they're going to expand it to top 10, top 15.
Because people will feel left out.
Oh, yeah, absolutely.
That happened in California. They finally, I think, okay, this could be a myth, but California had apparently 40 languages,
Hmm.
which they were printed ballots and all that. And finally, they realized that they could not keep up with the number of languages, so
Right.
they had to limit it to the most common, the most needed
Hmm.
Spanish, Chinese, I forgot what else, but
Right,
that's
yeah.
one of those things.
Hmm.
Well, you have the pedigree then to run for this because you have the experience.
Yes.
You've done a few things as far as legislation and ideas about how to solve these problems. And so we're reaching the end of this particular segment, but on the other side, I'm going to ask you for what concrete ideas you have
Absolutely.
regarding something like the opioid crisis, which is immediate, and it's in this area, and it's part of your district.
Yes.
So, anyway, señores oyentes de USA la Media, estamos aquí en la mesa redonda de Round Table, en una conversación con Andre del Valle, who's running for the 175th district for the state rep.
Yes, correct.
And so, no se vayan. Les habla Fernando Mendez, Dylan Di Rosato al tablero. Regresamos en un momento.
Being prepared is a part of who you are, but it's especially important in the case of a disaster. Be informed about possible emergencies in your area. Make a plan that covers where you'll go in an emergency. Build a kit with the things you need to survive. There's no one more capable of planning for your situation than you. Start your plan today. Go to ready.gov/myplan.
If you love them enough to suck the snot out of their nose at 4 a.m., then surely you'll check NHTSA.gov/the right seat to make sure they're in the right car seat.
Señoras oyentes de USA la Media, estamos aquí de nuevo con su programa La Mesa Redonda, desde el corazón de Barrio Hispano, en la ciudad del amor fraternal. Estamos en compañía de André del Valle, quien está corriendo para el distrito 175, para senador estatal. So,
Representante estatal.
representante.
Sí, sí.
Perdón, representante.
Sí, sí.
See, that's why I don't have to do it in Spanish, because I get all mixed up.
Fair enough.
Dylan de Rosato al tablero. I want to know a little bit more about you. But
Absolutely.
your education. You say you're from Colombian extraction, so am I.
Okay.
Somos what is it called? Paisanos.
Paisanos, sí.
Somos paisanos. You were born here, obviously.
I was born here. Yep.
Yeah.
Yep. In
Colombian parents, both?
My mom's Colombian.
Your mom is
Yes,
Colombian.
yes, Caleña.
Caleña?
Yes.
Okay. For those who don't know, it means Cali.
Cali, yes.
One of the large cities in Colombia. Cali, Medellín, Bogotá,
Yep.
Cartagena. Caleña, yeah. I have a brother who was born in Cali, even though I was born in Bogotá myself. Right. Where did you go to school?
So I went to LaSalle University. I stayed in Philadelphia. So
another thing we have in common.
Yes.
I went to LaSalle.
Oh, see, I knew we were in good company. But I went to LaSalle University, where I earned my bachelor's in political science and Spanish. Later on, going to Temple University for my master's in public policy.
Okay.
So I stayed in Philly to serve Philly.
Sure. Yeah, I didn't go to Temple. I went to LaSalle and then Villanova University.
Okay.
So, but it's all in this.
The Wildcats, there you
it's all
go.
in the same, yes.
Yeah.
Love when they play basketball.
Yeah. Your team's a little bit better than ours right now.
And Temple is. I have a nephew who's working for the basketball team.
Oh, there you
Temple.
go. Good.
Well, I wanted to ask you in terms of solving some of the problems that we have here.
Yes.
And one of the biggest is the opioid crisis. Yes. And we have one of our hosts here is Brett Carpenter.
Mm-hmm. Oh, yeah.
Fairly unknown. And he's been dealing with this problem. He's quite well informed about it. And sometimes there's no support from the city in terms of what they want to do. And one of the conflicts, for instance, is that they wanted some of the people that he deals with to report to these centers where they don't feel safe. Some of these shelters.
Right.
And so that's one conflict that he has with the city all the time. So the city went and closed a certain area where there were all these addicts out on the street, and they moved them. Remember that or the Conrail?
Conrail, yep.
So
on Gurney Street, yep.
Right. Did they solve that problem, and where are they now?
Yes. No, we absolutely have not solved this problem. This, unfortunately, is not a Philly-only problem. This is something that's happening across the country.
Understand.
But one of the things is, when we, as a city, we did what I think is a very bad job as to how we approached that situation on Gurney Street. We had about 400 people who were living right next to the train tracks on Conrail. We ended up going in there. Dr. Oz came in and did a whole special on it and talked about bringing resources to Philadelphia. But what we ended up doing was pretty much advertising Philadelphia. We kept saying Philadelphia has the cheapest and purest form of heroin in the country, which unfortunately led more people to come and influx into the city. Where they are now is we've shut down Gurney Street. what ended up happening was 4 more encampments opened up on Lehigh Avenue. So it was Emerald Street, Kensington, Frankfurt, and Tulip Streets had these encampments where the 400 that were at Gurney later went into these encampments. It took about a year, I want to say a year and 2 months, before the city was able to close down the 4 encampments. What we tried doing was a lot of outreach and going into the encampments, speaking with those battling addiction. I'm the only candidate in this race who actually walked into the encampments and talked to those battling addiction. I'm the only candidate that went to Canada to learn about their safe consumption sites, or what many call safe injection sites. I'm the only candidate who has lost 5 friends to this opioid epidemic. I know, what it's like to lose someone to this epidemic. I know I'm not the only one, but this is an epidemic that doesn't discriminate on your skin color. It doesn't discriminate on your economic status. This is something that's impacting everyone. And, one of the things that I want to do is we have to break down some of the barriers to get folks into treatment. One of the things is that we learned at the city level was one of the biggest barriers and challenges for someone battling addiction to get into treatment was the form of an identification. Mm-hmm. We created the Municipal ID program, which was the lead sponsor was Councilwoman Sanchez, that not only helped those battling addiction get into treatment, but it's helped our reentry populations, our seniors, our students, and it's also in our immigration population as well, because it not only opened up a bank account. You could open up a bank account with this ID. You could open up a library card. So it not only was it helping those get into treatment, not only giving a form of identification to people, but it was helping our communities by being able to give literacy and financial literacy to folks who had no financial institutions that had access to that. So that's one of the things I really want to do is break down some of those barriers. We have to do a full audit of our behavioral health system. The fact that we don't know how many shelter beds there are in the city, the fact that we don't know how much it costs for an individual to go into treatment for a 6-month stay is something that we should know. And that's not on the city itself. That's at the state level as well. We need to know. We need to have a full audit, which is something that we haven't seen at the state level or at the city level to really understand this behavioral health system and what it needs. The last piece is we really need to hold the real drug dealers accountable, which are the folks that are wearing white coats. The fact that this opioid epidemic happened was because of overprescribing of prescription painkillers. That's how this whole thing started. One of my friends who did pass away got injured. He broke his collarbone in college playing football, overprescribed on OxyContin, leading him to heroin with a bad batch of fentanyl. That's the story, and this kid was from Bucks County. It's something that, as I mentioned, is not something that impacts just one demographic. This is now hitting across all demographics, across all economic statuses, right. But we have to really address it. The fact that we're losing 1,200 people a year in Philadelphia is an epidemic, and this state rep that we have right now has ignored this epidemic, has never walked in Kensington, has never talked about even appropriating funds to address this epidemic. In city council, we were able to appropriate $20 million for shelters, for treatment centers, and to go towards Prevention Point, which is helping with a lot of this as well.
If you have just tuned in to USA la Media, we're in a conversation with Andrés del Valle. Estamos en una conversación con Andrés del Valle. Está corriendo para el Distrito 175 como representante.
Sí, señor.
How do they contact you?
They can contact me by visiting my website. It's andreddelvalle.com. On Facebook, Del Valle for PA. Twitter, Del Valle for PA. Instagram, Del Valle for PA. Okay. So, cualquiera de esos métodos.
Any of those.
Yeah,
cualquiera de esos métodos. Muy bien. We'll repeat that occasionally because it's important.
It is.
People want to support you that they find you.
Absolutely.
How's it going with social media?
Social media, social media at the end of the day, we can do great. We can have 1,000 shares on videos, but at the end of the day, social media, I believe, doesn't vote. People can say I'm supporting you and I'm 100% behind you, but until they go into a booth on election day, that's the only data that I need is that individual to go in and vote. So, on social media, we like to share our story. We like to share our videos. We're going to obviously share that we were here. We like people to know what we're up to. because it is a message. It is a story I'm telling. I'm telling folks my story of how I grew up in a 10-person household. I'm telling folks how, both my parents are immigrants and why I fight for immigrants around the city. I'm telling folks why the opioid epidemic is so close to me because I've lost friends to this epidemic. The gun violence epidemic, which is impacting our city. Like I said, I'm from Philly. I went to school in Philly, and I want to help Philly. And that's a story that I don't think, Philly is always seen as the underdog. And in this campaign, I know I'm the underdog, and I know that it's an uphill battle, but this is an uphill battle that I know I'm going to win.
What was your neighborhood? Where did you grow up?
So we grew up in Mayfair originally, and that was when my family first started settling in.
Mm-hmm.
We grew up with, like I said, about 10 people in our household. It was my uncles, cousins, myself. We all grew up there, and my aunt used to work in a factory that got shut down. My dad, when he first came to the country years ago, he worked at a factory for $2.50. So, when we're talking about blue-collar jobs and why I fight for blue-collar workers, that's why it's so close to me, because I understand that. I understand that struggle. I understand my grandmother was going blind, and she was on SNAP. So I understand what it is to struggle like that. And when I see people that are saying, well, people choose to be on assistance programs, people don't choose that. People need it. It's something that helps them to get out of a rut or out of a bad time in their life. And I think I'm a perfect example of that my parents came here with nothing, no ability to speak the language, no possessions. And, just one generation later, their child is running for state representative to help others who went through that same struggle. And I think that is literally the American dream. And that's why I keep saying it's a better vision for our campaign, because it's not only something that is unique to me, but there's thousands of people around the city, thousands of people around this country who have this very same story of being the product of immigrant parents and now are trying to give back to the same community that they grew up in.
Yeah, that sort of brings up the topic of immigration, which we will address
Yes.
Later on. But interesting about the student debt,
Yes.
because that's one of the we know about the presidential race going on now, and one of the
There is?
one of the promises from Sanders and Warren, I think also, but
Yes.
mostly Sanders, about free education, about getting rid of the student debt and all that.
Yes.
You have a student debt?
I have about $70,000 worth of student debt.
There
Yes.
you go.
Yes.
Yeah. So that's a reality for
It is.
especially for minorities, for middle class poor people who have to incur debt
Yes.
in order to get any kind of education.
Mm-hmm.
So, did you go to graduate school also?
I did.
Yeah.
I did. I went to Temple University for my
Yeah.
master's. Yeah. So one of the things about the student debt is it's crippling. I mean, we have trillions of dollars of debt nationwide, just around student debt. When folks ask me, why aren't you married? Why aren't you engaged yet? Well, I can't afford a ring. That's the reality. I can't afford a wedding. When folks ask our generation, well, why are you guys always renting? Why are you a very transient community? Well, we're renting because we can't afford to put down a down payment on a house. We can't afford the mortgage payments. When rent continues to go up, we have to move. It's not a choice that we want. It's something that we have to do. And that's a lot of people from my generation that are telling me that. And, when I look at some of our state-funded universities who charge, one of the biggest barriers is an application fee. If I come from a low-income household and I have to pay, $50, $100, $125 just for you to review my application, I'm only going to be able to apply to 5 schools.
And that's only to apply to a few schools.
Yeah.
Well, Andre, it's a very interesting topic
Yeah,
about
absolutely.
education, so I would love to continue addressing that.
Sure.
We reached the end of this segment here in USA La Media, La Mesa Redonda, the Round Table. Desde el corazón de Barrio Hispano, en la ciudad del amor fraternal, les habla Fernando Mendez. Andre del Valle is our guest, Dylan Di Rosato al tablero. Regresamos en un momento.
Not completing high school is more of a social thing than it was an academic thing. Even though all these years have passed, I still had that longing to have my diploma. I have a mentor, and she convinced me to continue my education.
No one receives a diploma alone.
If you're even considering getting your high school diploma, go get it. You can do it.
Find free adult education classes near you at finishyourdiploma.org.
They call me Maxie, but I prefer tripod. I was your above-average four-legged homie, and then wham, bam, minivan. Some people pity me. Now that's lame. I still run, fetch, and swim. And the ladies love me. I'm the ultimate wingman. Just don't ask me to high five.
Señores oyentes de Usa la Media, estamos aquí de nuevo con su programa La Mesa Redonda. Les habla Fernando Mendez desde el corazón del barrio hispano en la ciudad del amor fraternal. André del Valle is our guest. He's running for District 175 for State Rep. And Dylan de los Santos al tablero. Estamos en una conversación sobre, bueno, el asunto de los opioides y la educación. André, y como él tiene experiencia por haber trabajado con la concejal María Quiñones, que mucha gente conoce, sabe lo que ella ha hecho por la comunidad. Así que Andrés tiene un buen pedigree, yes, ¿no? En cuanto a su experiencia política. Pero quiero hablar más sobre la educación, porque you know that, what's his name, Sanders got in trouble for sort of making a positive statement regarding Fidel Castro.
Oh, I did see
and
that.
what he
Yes.
did for Cuba, that he created a literacy program that made Cuba one of the most literate nations
Yep.
in South America and the continent, and 97% literacy, which was incredible. But the repercussions of that statement are not positive for him.
Right.
He got very negative feedback from Florida, from the Cuban community, obviously, and so he's in hot water for that. And so you know that as politicians, you have to step carefully around some issues,
Right.
regardless of which side, Democrat or Republican.
Right.
You still have to be careful with what you say. Do you think it's a good idea for Sanders and others to keep promising a free education?
I think I do. I do believe that it's a very progressive and it's a very liberal idea. I would like to see how they're going to implement it. Right, everything as
how they're going to pay for it?
Well, that's I think the biggest challenge, right? Because anyone can make any promise, right? But you have to be able to show that you can operationalize it, and that's one of the biggest challenges as legislators that we have is, okay, your idea works, you can pass that idea, but how do you make sure it actually functions once you pass it? And unfortunately, there's a lot of great ideas out there that have never been operationalized. For example, we have a bill at state level that takes away weapons from domestic abusers, and I think that's a great bill. I would absolutely support it. But the issue is that when we don't operationalize a bill, what happens is only 13 people in Philadelphia, 31 people in Philadelphia out of 1,300 relinquish their weapons. So the bill on paper looks great, but when you try and operationalize it, it doesn't do what it needs to do.
Yeah.
So one of the things is you have to give funding to the departments, to local municipalities to be able to enforce and issue warrants and things like that to make it work. But when people don't think it through to the end, that's where you have challenges.
Well,
so
that's a very clear. What you just said is so true. It looks good on paper, and it's difficult to put into practice. Right. And if you have not taken care of all the the different details that need to be dealt with.
Right.
That's my problem with the socialism and the Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez and Sanders and Warren, that they promise all these things, but when you look at it closely, it makes no sense. He just, in defense of his stance, he just pulled out a paper the other day where he has numbers about how he's going to this costs that, and he's going to pay for. I don't know exactly what the paper says.
Right.
But when he was questioned by an interviewer on CNN, he pulled the paper and said, like, here are the numbers, but we don't know what it means. How are you going to raise them and how are you going to pay for it? And here's my statement regarding socialism, whatever Bernie Sanders wants to impose. And you, as a young person, you're probably thinking that he is. That you could support him and his ideas. A lot of young people are supporting him. But I think it's a lack of understanding of what it looks good on paper, socialism, and what, as a political reality, what it does.
Well, I would push back a little bit, and I would say that I think, especially with my generation, people are inspired by folks like Bernie, Warren, Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez. You know, it's that we're very fed up with the status quo. We're tired of the same almost recycling of ideas. And what we're trying to do is set something that moves everything a little bit more left, right? So it is a socialistic agenda, but I think that when you have that much backing in Nevada and New Hampshire, and you know what we're seeing from different caucuses is that people are ready to make those programs work. So that, and obviously, you know, at the president's level, it's going to start with the idea, but we also have to work in Congress to start getting younger people in Congress in order to get those agendas to actually roll out. And, you know, when it trickles down, that's why, you know, people, when they ask me, well, why are you running? Because I believe we need change. We need a fresh face and what folks say, new blood and fresh blood into these local races. Because when we have the same consistent ideas, nothing really changes.
You see yourself in the same line of thought as Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez?
I wouldn't put myself on that level. I think she's very bright, and I don't think.
I think you're very bright too.
Thank you. I take it. Yeah, I appreciate it. You know, I think we're. She's on a different level.
Colombians are very smart.
We are. You know, the fact that she's in Congress and was elected, I give her kudos and I applaud her for what she's been doing, and I'm very impressed by what she's accomplished as a freshman. And I don't think I'm on the same level yet, but I hope to one day be able to get to where she's at.
But the kind of thinking that she brings to the fore?
I think it's very progressive. It's very outside the box, and sometimes you need that.
Way outside the box.
You need that in government, though. You need it because it makes people think of a different perspective.
Yeah, but he's not going to win. Sanders is not going to win the presidency with that kind of platform.
I think he's been doing good, and I'm not saying that.
Okay, read about McGovern versus Nixon, and you see what could happen here.
Fair enough. You know?
Yeah,
I just think that what Warren and Bernie are doing right now, and you know, even Pete Buttigieg, is that they're moving the party a little more to the left than they're accustomed to. Barack Obama in this race would have been considered a moderate in this race, on his stances.
Absolutely.
So
he'll be Buttigieg in a way. Yes.
Right. So, you know, what they're doing is they're literally moving that needle a little bit more to the left than people are accustomed to. And that's why you see such a divide, I think, between, you know, Warren and Bernie. And then you look at other candidates like, you know, Pete's kind of here. And then you see Biden. So it's like a range of voters, right? But you see a lot of young people getting inspired by Bernie and Warren and even Pete. Because it's just a different way of thinking. It's fresh ideas. It's stuff that has never been done before. And I think people are just ready for a change and it's systematic change. And what we're seeing right now is a generational shift in politics. And this is not only here in Philadelphia, but across the country. Here in Philadelphia, we just elected three of our youngest members with Jamie Gaultier, Isaiah Thomas, and Kathy Gilmore Richardson. Kathy being the youngest millennial that we've ever elected.
Isaiah Thomas was here.
Yeah.
But here's another chance for you to do your elevator speech.
Yes, absolutely.
Very brief. Go ahead.
Yeah. So, I mean, when we're talking about the 175th district, which covers Kensington, Fishtown, and Northern Liberties, we have a lot of issues, from the opioid epidemic leaving lives and needles behind, to students drowning in debt, to gun violence ravaging our city, and blue-collar workers' rights are being infringed on every single day, not only in our Commonwealth, but across the city as well. And what we have, like I said, the theme of my campaign is a better vision not only for students, being able to break down some of the barriers to get them into higher institutions, putting caps on student loans, creating tax credit at the state level to get more money back on income taxes, to addressing gun violence epidemic by ensuring that those who are a threat to society and to themselves don't have access to weapons. And folks that say, well, I need it for hunting, I'm in the belief that if you need an AR, an assault rifle for hunting, you should probably pick up a different sport.
Right.
I want to create red flag law legislation that protects our residents, and I want to address an opioid epidemic by breaking down the barriers to treatment. And I think if we, and moving Pennsylvania towards renewable energy, and if we're ready for a better vision, I encourage everyone to join my campaign, volunteer, share my stories, my vision on social media, and get others engaged, because we have an opportunity to bring not only someone that's young, but a Latino, adding more Latino representation up in Harrisburg, but also an opportunity to get someone who has passed legislation, operationalized legislation, and understands what it is to negotiate and work for the people into office. And I think that's what we're going to accomplish on April 28th.
Oh, you certainly give us hope as a young Latino.
Yes.
With a lot of energy and ideas.
Thank you.
And I just hope you can do this.
Thank you. Well, together we can do it.
Yes. Well, and in spite of my questions to you, because I like the discussion about the politics of the moment, but in spite of that, I sort of am more in support of what you want to do than in opposition.
Right.
I think that we need new people. We need young people with energy and ideas, and that's in a way what you represent right now. What I'm concerned about on the national level is what's happening with the party going too far to the left, and what is the main objective? What should be at this point? What should it be? The main objective in the national campaign?
Right now the main objective is taking back the White House.
Get rid of Trump.
Yeah.
And what I'm concerned is that if we line up too much to the left, that pendulum is going to stay more to the right, because that's where we are right now, on that extreme right actually, and it's not going to swing all the way to the left. You need sort of a Clintonian kind of view, where you do things from the middle, moderate. Buttigieg is there, I believe. So is Biden. But they don't have traction at this moment. It seems to be that Bernie has all the votes right now. So I don't know.
Well, yeah, and like I always tell voters, the presidential election is the one that everyone always looks at, right?
Yeah.
But
the local one means a lot more.
Right. If you look at the local elections and you look at what's happening in Harrisburg, Trump's agenda has been in Harrisburg for years and decades. We've been in the minority as Democrats in the House for probably over 15 years. So what we're seeing in Washington is just Trump at a macro level, right? And the Pennsylvania House at a macro level there.
Right, you are.
What we're trying to do here in Pennsylvania, we have to flip 9 seats in order to take back the House in Pennsylvania, and we have the opportunity to elect more progressive candidates, not only here in Philadelphia, but across the Commonwealth, that are really going to move that agenda and advance the agenda of the Democratic Party at the State House. But what I'm saying by that is, yes, the presidential election is very important, but we have the opportunity to flip that agenda and flip that messaging of the Republican Party here in Pennsylvania by voting on April 28th, not only for the president election, but the state rep races and the local ones as well.
And we reached the end of this segment aquí en Usa la Media, la Mesa Redonda. Les habla Fernando Mendez. André del Valle is our guest. Dylan de Rosato al tablero. Regresamos en un momento.
I came out in the 11th grade. Nobody was embracing you. The kids were cruel. It was very difficult to be gay. Not completing high school is more of a social thing than it was an academic thing. And even though all these years have passed, I still had that longing to have my diploma. I have a mentor, Maria, and she convinced me to continue my education. Just never judges. She's a true role model.
From the depths of my heart, I thank you, Maria, for being a friend and a beautiful person. No one receives a diploma alone, and I'm honored to share this moment with you. Thank you.
If you're even considering getting your high school diploma, go get it. You can do it.
Find free adult education classes near you at finishyourdiploma.org.
Señoras oyentes de USA la Media, estamos aquí de nuevo con su programa La Mesa Redonda de Round Table desde el corazón del barrio hispano en la ciudad del amor fraternal. Les habla Fernando Mendez, Dylan de Rosato al tablero. Nos acompaña hoy a André del Valle, es candidato para el distrito 175 como representante, y estamos hablando sobre, bueno, algunos de los temas que nos preocupan. Ya hablamos de la crisis de los opioides y algunas soluciones que él propone. Tiene experiencia por haber trabajado con la concejal María Quiñones, y él tiene ese es su historial, su pedigrí en cierto modo, y bueno, pues lo vemos de un modo muy positivo. Él trae energía y juventud y ambiciona pues llegar a Harrisburg para cambiar el ambiente allí, a ver qué podemos hacer en cuanto a otros problemas que nos preocupan. Gun control being one of them, ¿no? ¿Qué pasó con gun control? What are we going to do with this?
I mean, right now that's a full-blown epidemic. That's just as bad as our opioid epidemic. It's as bad as our student loan crisis. I mean, the fact that we have 300 families a year that are being ravaged by gun violence around the city, the fact that Pennsylvania is one of the very few states that doesn't hold the gun owner accountable for lost or stolen weapons.
Right.
So if you lose a weapon and it's used in a murder, you're actually not held accountable. I believe that every gun owner, just the way anything else is reported, should be held accountable. The fact that domestic abusers had, thankfully for this law now, can still have their weapons because we didn't operationalize the law, that's a huge issue. Mm-hmm. If you're a threat to yourself and to society, we need to have red flag law legislation that ensures that you're not able to get a weapon. There's no reason for someone who has been proven to be an abuser, who has proven to have a history of crime and violent crimes, to have access to those weapons. Now, I'm not, I do believe in criminal justice reform. I'm the only candidate that's talking about criminal justice reform. But I think that for those individuals that have proven time and time again that they shouldn't have access to a weapon, I think that we need to do everything we can to protect our residents here in Philadelphia and around the Commonwealth.
Yeah. Bloomberg is controversial for one of those things about gun control. Huh? Well, was it stop and search? What was it?
Stop and frisk?
Stop and frisk.
Yes.
That was not popular.
That is still not
New
popular.
York.
No, it is still not popular. I mean, the fact that, stop and frisk was essentially a racially motivated discriminatory practice that allowed officers to stop someone at any point and frisk them to see if they had weapons, drugs, anything on them. One of the rights of being in the nations and one of the freedoms is to move around the country freely. The reason why we don't have borders within states is because we're allowed to freely move in between states. Right. So, it became essentially an authoritarian kind of society where you were being able to stop. And I just don't believe in that practice. I would never support anything like that. Especially, as I mentioned before, I'm the product of immigrant parents. I want to do everything we can to protect our immigrant populations, but also making sure that we're addressing criminal justice reform, because there's a lot of work we need to do in that sector.
Speaking of immigrant populations,
yes.
Another controversial aspect is the whole sanctuary city
yes.
thing.
Mm-hmm.
And the federal government, especially directly from the White House, they're opposed to this sanctuary. You say.
Yes.
What do you think was the
Well, actually, when Sanctuary City actually started with Mayor Kenny's administration, Councilwoman Sanchez and we were part of those conversations to make Philadelphia a sanctuary city. I'm in 100% support of a sanctuary city. I'm okay with being on the opposite end of 45's agenda. And if he wants to roll back the resources to Philadelphia, we always have found ways to leverage what else we have to make sure we have those funds. I'm perfectly okay. I think the fact that we created a program, the municipal ID program, and made sure that ICE didn't have the capacity to access that. The fact that we have made sure that ICE isn't just coming in and rounding up folks or detaining them in our city. I think that's kudos to the mayor, and I applaud him for what he's done. I believe we have to do everything we can to protect our Philadelphia, our sanctuary city status, our residents, because immigrants do so much for our economy, not only here in Philadelphia, but across the Commonwealth, that people really don't realize the positive contributions. And, some people may say, well, they're thieves, and that's not true. The reality is there's bad actors in any field. There's bad reporters, there's bad politicians, there's bad, police officers, that doesn't reflect a whole. I mean, like I said earlier, the fact that my parents are both immigrants and they, went through their life struggling and they got to where they were in their careers and now have the opportunity to run for office. I think that's the story that we want to see more of here in Philadelphia. And, just because I came from that life, I understand what it means. And that's why I want to protect our immigrant populations.
Yeah, there's no question this is a country built by immigrants. Mm-hmm. And that's one of the problems right now, in fact. Many states are suffering. Mm-hmm. Border states, Texas, Arizona, California, are suffering from the lack of labor to collect the crops. Mm-hmm. in Southern California. They are suffering from that. Yep. The landscaping business, many immigrants joined, they're also suffering. Right. All kinds of builders in this city right now looking for people. I mean, I have a few connections in the building industry. I mean, people that I have known who are looking for help, and they don't find it. Mm-hmm. Immigrants are scarce right now, right. Available, whether legal or illegal. They are not here, right? And that's happening in the restaurant industry also, which employed a large part of the immigrant population. Right,
and that's that's due because of policies that have attacked our immigrant populations. I always say that aunque hablamos con acento, no pensamos con acento. Mm-hmm. And we have to do what we can to protect our immigrant populations in the workforce, in our schools, in our communities. And one of the things that the current representative in this area has done, she actually voted on a bill that mandated that contractors verify the status of their workers. So if I'm an undocumented individual, and I'm working for a contractor, and he has to verify that I'm legal, I don't get the opportunity to work on that project or in that sector. The fact that she, as a Democrat, voted for a bill like that is an attack, a discriminatory attack on our immigrant populations. As someone who says that they're an ally, I think that has shown where she stands on a lot of these issues. The fact that you can racially be biased, the fact that you can unjustly terminate someone's job because of their status based on a bill that's so discriminatory that I don't know how it passed in the House. But the fact that she voted for it is because she has donors who supported that bill, and that's why she voted for it. And I could never have voted for the E-Verify bill, which she did.
Speaking of donors,
yes.
How are you helping to finance your campaign?
Yes, so our campaign is all, it's a very grassroots campaign, and I know everyone says grassroots, but none of my donations have been over $500. I get a lot of, I think I've gotten two that are $250 at the highest amounts, and then I get a lot of $25, $20, $100 here. But we have hit over 100 donors who have been helping this campaign out. I've put money in myself of my personal funds to make sure that I'm able, the little bit that I had, to go into this campaign. But, at the end of the day, what we're selling and what we're telling is a story and a message of a better vision. And people are buying into that because they understand what it takes to actually get to that level.
It's expensive to run.
It is very expensive to run. And that's why, I believe you don't see a lot more people that look like me running for office. It's difficult. It's very technical. The fact that you have to get 300 signatures just to get on the ballot, the fact that you're running against an incumbent, the fact is that you have to raise money, you have to hire a team, you have to do a lot of door knocking, you have to pay for literature. I'm the candidate that's paying my team a living wage, so I'm making sure that everyone's making at least $15 an hour. So those are things that I'm advocating for, because I can't go to Harrisburg and say I'm going to fight for your rights, but then treat my internal team like they're nothing. So, that's it's very expensive, but I believe that when you're doing the right thing and you're advocating for the right issues, a lot of people in the community buy into that, and they understand why we need a champion on all these issues and much more.
Yes. Well, I know like in most political races, there are candidates that have like one singular issue that they are identified with, or two maybe. Sanders has a couple of them. So what would you say are your main issues?
Yeah, so I wouldn't say that I have one issue. I think our city has too many issues just to be a one-issue kind of candidate.
But you must have a little list of priorities.
I do. My top priorities are the opioid epidemic. I'm combating that head-on. The gun violence epidemic that we have, the student loan crisis, because that's something that impacts my district very, very hard. Moving Pennsylvania towards renewable energy is something that folks haven't really talked about on this campaign. But Philadelphia is 2 degrees warmer than previous century temperatures. Now, to some, people are like, 2 degrees, that's nothing. 2 degrees means that in a few years, we're going to be flooding here in Philadelphia. Everything along my district, which is along the river, is a floodplain. So in about 10 years, if we keep going at the rate we're going, my district may be underwater because of the rise of the rise of temperatures. And
the fact is we don't see snow here.
You don't see it. So. Yeah, I mean, it's February, end of February, and we haven't seen snow. Yeah. So we have a lot of work to do. And when I say moving towards renewable energy, a lot of people think I'm trying to take away jobs. And it's not that. We have the opportunity to create a ton of jobs by moving folks to renewable energy, hydroelectric pumps, solar panels on houses, but we have to make that affordable. So I want to create tax credits that incentivize folks to go be able to afford solar panels on their house, to be able to move to hydraulic electric pumps on their businesses that are along the river. We have the opportunity to go green here in Pennsylvania, but we have to do it now. It can't be something that we wait 2050 for, because we don't have that kind of time.
Well, so that's your elevator speech. One more time. For the last time, I have to contact you.
Yes. How to contact me is by visiting Andre Del Valle. That's ANDRE, D as in David, ELVALLE.com. If you find me on Facebook, it's Andre Del Valle for state representative, and on Instagram, Del Valle for PA, and on Twitter, Del Valle for PA as well.
And with that, we have reached the end of today's edition of the Round Table. Me despido de ustedes, Fernando Mendez, Dylan de Rosato al Tablero. We were visited by Andre Del Valle, who's running for the District 175. He wants to be their representative.
Yes, thank you.
Thank you for coming to us.
Thank you for having me. I appreciate it.
It's a pleasure.
Thank you. Un placer.
Y muchas gracias por su sintonía. Hasta la próxima.